Canada's inflation rate jumps again this Monday night. How the Iran war is driving up the cost of living.
It's driving us crazy, you know?
Doubts over the next steps in the Iran war as the ceasefire deadline looms. Plus, why Ontario's premier is reversing course over the purchase of a private jet.
I'm under scrutiny more than the Prime Minister, more than any premier in the entire country.
And running to the future, the robot racers in China leaving human records in the dust.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news. A Canadian has been killed in a shooting at a popular tourist site in Mexico. It happened at the Pyramid of the Moon, an ancient archaeological site not far from Mexico City. Mexican authorities say several other tourists were injured when a gunman opened fire. Jillian Piper is following developments for us. Jillian.
Donna, there are still many questions about what exactly happened at the Teotihuacán archaeological site, which is about 40 kilometers northeast of the Mexican capital. But what we do know now is that Mexican authorities say a man fired shots at the popular tourist attraction, killing a Canadian woman. Her identity has not yet been revealed by authorities, but the Foreign Affairs Minister did confirm a Canadian was killed and that another was injured, calling the incident a horrific act of gun violence. My thoughts are with their family and loved ones, and Global Affairs consular officials are in touch to provide assistance. Mexican police say a Canadian suffered a gunshot wound along with 2 Colombians and a Russian tourist. All 4 are receiving medical attention in hospital. The local government also says 2 more people were injured from falls. Police say a firearm, a bladed weapon, and live ammunition were all recovered at the scene, and that the shooter died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds. The identity or motivation of the gunman has not yet been revealed, but for now police believe he acted alone. Authorities have not said if tourists were being targeted. In a social media post, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said she is deeply saddened by the event and that security officials are responding on site. I express my sincere solidarity with those affected and their families. We are in contact with the Canadian Embassy. I have instructed the Security Cabinet to thoroughly investigate these events and provide all necessary support. The Canadian government is advising Canadians to exercise a high degree of caution when visiting the area at this time. Donna?
Okay, Jillian Piper, thank you. There is another indicator today of the impact the war the U.S. and Israel started with Iran is having on the cost of living in Canada. It's driving up the cost of energy and driving up inflation, which has now climbed to the highest level in 14 months. Canada's inflation rose to 2.4% in March, fueled by a record 21.2% spike in the price of fuel. And it's affecting more than just the price you pay at the pumps. Heather Yurex-West explains.
Sebastian White is a small business owner with big dreams.
We're just looking to become the biggest exterior window washing company in all of Alberta.
But the last few months have not been easy. U.S. tariffs and the price of gas have the cost of doing business soaring.
It's driving us crazy, you know? Like, we want to help out customers, but at this point, we're almost at a rate where we have to increase prices.
It's pressure that's being felt across the Canadian economy, pushing inflation numbers to their highest point in more than a year.
March inflation came in at 2.4%, which was higher than in February at 1.8%. The main driver here is gasoline prices, which have surged nearly 40% since the start of the year.
With the war in Iran still blocking the Strait of Hormuz, a critical energy shipping route, surging oil, natural gas, and fertilizer prices aren't going away. But the start of the week brought Canadians some relief.
10 cents off the price of gas, 4 cents off diesel, also jet fuel.
The federal government implementing a summer-long fuel excise tax holiday. The relief a far cry from where gas prices had been just 2 months ago.
$1.54 is way too high still. And we're getting excited about it, you know, because $1.74 is horrible.
It's great. Anything helps, you know. But if it comes down some more, that'll be even better.
Gas prices have raised, 50 cents or 40 cents in like 3 months. 10 cents is going to save me nothing.
The federal tax holiday will help, but it's not going to reverse the impacts of the Iran war and the energy price.
The question now whether this gas tax holiday will settle inflation in time for the Bank of Canada's next decision on interest rates. The central bank due to decide whether to cut the lending rate, hike it, or keep it the same April 29th. Donna?
Okay, Heather Yorks West in Calgary. Thanks, Heather. What happens next in the war on Iran is uncertain. The 2-week ceasefire Israel, the U.S. and Iran agreed to expires on Wednesday. The American President, Donald Trump, claims a new round of negotiations is about to take place in Pakistan, but Iran does not appear to be on board with that. Jackson Prosco explains where things stand on what has been another confusing day of mixed messaging.
Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
This was the moment the U.S. Navy fired on an Iranian cargo ship that defied the American blockade. U.S. forces boarded the vessel and seized it.
You're entering the area of a military blockade.
U.S. Central Command says it has turned back at least 27 ships so far. All while Iran vows to retaliate, casting further doubt a lasting peace might be reached. Yet in Pakistan, there are signs a second round of high-stakes talks will soon get underway, involving U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and a delegation from Iran, which has sent mixed signals about whether it will attend.
I think the signaling from the U.S. front, and we see the lead-up in the preparations as well, is something that the U.S. is willing to dial up the pressure, but they want to negotiate from a position of strength.
On social media, U.S. President Donald Trump said if a deal happens under him, it will guarantee peace, security, and safety. Iran's president cautioned unconstructive and contradictory signals from American officials carry a bitter message. They seek Iran's surrender. Iranians do not submit to force. There's also pressure from Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned his country has not yet finished the task of defeating Iran. A sudden breakthrough would not ease the damage to the global economy. More than 50 days of limited shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has left a gulf in energy supplies. Even with peace, traffic will be slow to resume.
In terms of vessels going back into the region, potentially to load a cargo of crude oil or fertilizer, people will be very, very cautious.
Trump says it's highly unlikely that the 2-week ceasefire will be extended if talks collapse. He also denies that he's under any pressure to make a deal happen, but believes one will come together quickly. Donna?
Okay, Jackson in Washington, thanks. There has been widespread condemnation of an Israeli soldier apparently hitting a statue of Jesus with a sledgehammer. This picture, which the Israeli military says is genuine, was taken in southern Lebanon. Locals say the crucifix was outside a family home in one of the few villages where residents have remained during Israel's war with Hezbollah. Israel's prime minister posted he was stunned and saddened by the photo. The IDF is investigating and says the soldier's conduct is wholly inconsistent with the values expected of its troops. Israel is pushing ahead with expanding settlements in the occupied West Bank. Yesterday, government ministers celebrated the reestablishment of the Sanur settlement that was evacuated 21 years ago. Israel's finance minister calls it an historic correction that is killing the idea of a Palestinian state. The settlement was one of 19 that were removed under the 2005 disengagement plan, which also removed all settlements from Gaza. West Bank settlements are considered illegal under international law. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford says he listened to the people and will now sell a private jet bought by the province. There was swift backlash after his office announced the purchase of a $29 million Bombardier jet to be used by Ford and others in his government to travel across Canada and the U.S. Mackenzie Gray reports on why Ford decided to reverse course.
And I guess the topic that we're going to talk about is the plane.
Ontario's Premier was ready to defend his aborted takeoff.
I heard from the people, and I'm the Premier that listens to the people. If they don't like something, I'm not too shy to change my mind and say, okay, this isn't the time to move on.
Moving on from this Bombardier jet, a nearly $30 million purchase the Ontario government announced they made on Friday. By Sunday, Ford changed his mind after major backlash, but he still gave an impassioned pitch as to why the Premier really does need a private plane.
I have to go to the U.S. more. I have to head to Utah to meet the governors. I have to head to South Carolina to meet the southeastern governors. It's part of the job.
Ford can use this Ontario provincial police plane capable of landing on short runways and on gravel, the only option in many northern Ontario communities, something the Bombardier jet couldn't do.
It is so ridiculous.
The opposition feasting on the flip-flop.
The Premier's emergency landing, reselling his brand new luxury jet, is raising more questions than it has answered.
It is so disconnected from the reality of Ontarians' everyday lives. It says everything you need to know about Doug Ford.
You actually took a photo with my dad.
Oh, okay.
Buying a jet runs against the Politico ethos Ford has spent decades building, an everyman image, someone you could end up sitting beside in economy, leading Ford to lash out against the media, saying there should have been similar pushback on jets purchased by the federal and Quebec governments.
I'm under scrutiny more than the Prime Minister, more than any Premier in the entire country. When you see the federal government go out, and the inconsistencies from the media is just mind-boggling to me.
Even with what Ford calls a double standard, he blamed himself for not making the case directly to Ontarians as to why he needs a plane that he now plans to sell back to Bombardier, Donna. No word on what their return policy is.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thanks. Canada Post has reported its biggest ever financial loss. The Crown Corporation lost $1.57 billion before tax in 2025. That's according to its latest financial report, nearly double what it lost the year before. The federal government has given the Crown Corporation more than $2 billion in repayable loans to stay afloat. Canada Post plans to drop door-to-door delivery to the 4 million households who still receive it. After an assessment 2 years ago that the Canadian Armed Forces was in a death spiral when it comes to recruitment, things have turned around. Recruiting hit a 30-year high last year. 7,000 new members were added, and Canada's defense minister says the military is now on track to reach its goal. David Aiken explains what's driving the change.
The federal government is ready to boost defense spending by tens of billions of dollars, buying, among other things, new submarines and new fighter jets. And yet, even if the new subs or planes were delivered tomorrow, there may not be enough sailors or aviators to operate them.
If you're buying a fighter jet but you don't have the people to fly it or maintain it, then that fighter jet is not going to be useful.
The Auditor General said that last fall and said the Canadian Armed Forces was failing to meet its recruiting targets and recommended a series of changes, many of which the military did put into effect.
We made it number one priority for the department. So this is why it's fully resourced, fully staffed.
The changes appear to be working, with the military having one of its best years ever for recruiting. But of the 97 military trades or occupations, there are 21 occupations where the military is still critically short of people.
Conflict and war is not waiting for the Canadian Armed Forces to get their people trained up and ready to go in the fight.
We still have a way to go. We have examples where we're still short, for example, in the area of weapons engineer technicians or marine technicians.
One way that problem is being addressed: signing bonuses. Late last year, the military began paying a bonus worth $50,000 for new recruits ready to work in those occupations, such as fighter pilot or weapons engineer, that are under strength.
While it was only introduced in November of 2025, the results that we see are encouraging.
The military has also rolled out a new online recruitment portal, is using artificial intelligence to quickly screen applicants, and is setting up 18 new recruitment centers around the country with a focus on finding more women, more Indigenous people, and more visible minorities to join Canada's fighting forces. Donna.
Okay, David Aiken, thank you. Severe flooding in Ontario and Quebec. Coming up, the communities under threat from rising water. People in dozens of communities in Ontario and Quebec are nervously watching floodwater levels rise. Bike paths and roadways in the Ottawa-Gatineau area are already underwater. Rain is expected to taper off there by midweek. The community of Minden in Ontario's cottage country remains under a state of emergency. A number of bridges are closed and over 25,000 sandbags have been filled for residents there. Less than an hour west, the town of Bracebridge is on alert, and the next 48 hours could be critical. Karen Lieberman is in Bracebridge.
Donna, the concern is that conditions could change by the hour. The weekend was rough. Rain soaked the region and brought the water levels up higher. This road now is completely washed out. Last week, you could drive and walk through here without any water at all. The sun is shining. The weather forecast is looking hopeful, but it's a bit of a waiting game here in Bracebridge.
Right now, it's probably about, I'd say, 12, 13 inches, somewhere in there. So.
Mitch Green drove us to his home near Kirby's Beach. Walking wasn't possible. The road is washed out.
you don't want to go too deep, but you can almost see the ground down there. So probably it's about, I don't know, 3-4 feet.
Higher than it is on any other day, but these are not ordinary times in Bracebridge.
And that's all we're doing is sandbagging it so that it doesn't get up to the foundation of the house.
Green has lived here for around 30 years.
They called 2019 the 1 in a 100-year flood. You know, now it's like 1 in 72 months.
We came in 2019 when seasonal flooding and heavy rainfall forced the town to declare a state of emergency. This is not the same, but it's getting close.
But at the mouth of the river, where it's very, very flat, that 1.5 or 2 inches makes a difference. With the Lake Muskoka starting to fill up, pushing back a little bit on the discharge of the river, you know, that 2 inches could turn into 15 or 20 feet closer to your house.
Green is doing his best because the next few days are critical.
But I would say this is going to raise for another 2-3 days, then maybe it'll crest.
Then weeks for the water to recede.
I mean, you look at 2013, 2017, 2019, and now, you know. And I think a lot of people just feel like that they're not managing the watershed properly, that they're not releasing enough water when they should have.
There are flood warnings in effect across much of the region. No state of emergency here, though. Officials will continue to keep watch. Donna.
Okay, Karen Lieberman in Bracebridge, Ontario. Thanks. Under pressure ahead, the British Prime Minister's response to calls for him to resign. The British Prime Minister is being accused of throwing his staff and officials under the bus rather than taking responsibility for appointing Peter Mandelson as British ambassador to the U.S. Mandelson, a longtime friend of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, failed a security vetting. Keir Starmer says that was kept from him until last Tuesday, and he would have rejected the appointment had he known about it. Vincent McAviney reports on the pressure Starmer is under.
Is this the beginning of the end, Prime Minister?
It's the headache that won't go away for the British Prime Minister. Why in late 2024 did he appoint Labour grandee Peter Mandelson to be US ambassador, given his checkered record and known friendship with Jeffrey Epstein? Yeah. The Prime Minister had to explain himself again in the House of Commons on Monday.
I should not have appointed Peter Mandelson. I take responsibility for that decision. And I apologise again to the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who were clearly failed by my decision.
But the Prime Minister is clear. Mandelson's failure to pass security vetting was kept secret from him until last week.
The Foreign Office officials who made that decision did not pass this information to me, to the Foreign Secretary, to her predecessor, the Deputy Prime Minister, to any other minister, or even to the former Cabinet Secretary.
Timmy Bay, not Leader of the Opposition.
Opposition party leaders repeatedly called on the Prime Minister to resign. Instead, he announced a review into national security concerns associated with Mandelson's tenure, after confirming he had access to the highest level of secret material while in Washington. Under the law, the concerns which led to Mandelson's security clearance being rejected must stay confidential. On Tuesday, Ollie Robbins, who hasn't spoken about his firing, is set to appear before a parliamentary committee for questioning. Many MPs, including some in Starmer's own party, are questioning why Mandelson, who had to resign twice in disgrace from the last Labour government, was someone Starmer would entrust with such a sensitive position. Donna?
Vincent McAviney in London, thanks. Lapping the field next, how a robot finished way ahead of its competition in a half marathon. More extraordinary images are emerging from the Artemis II mission around the moon. Mission Commander Reed Wiseman posted this video of the Earth setting behind the moon. He says it was like watching the sunset at the beach from the most foreign seat in the cosmos. The American astronaut took the video on his iPhone, while his fellow astronauts, including Canadian Jeremy Hansen, were also taking photos and watching the wonder unfold. There's been a big breakthrough in robot technology. More than 100 humanoid robots ran a half marathon against thousands of human beings in Beijing this weekend. The fastest android didn't just win, it finished faster than any human ever has. And as Mike Armstrong reports, the humanoids did miles better than just 1 year ago.
It was human versus humanoid. More than 100 robots racing against runners Sunday in Beijing. When the same contest was held a year ago, it didn't go particularly well for the robots. And there were some rough spells for some of the mechanized participants this year as well. But there was an improvement. This spectator says the robots were funny last year, even losing arms and legs. This time was different. Now, the race was a full half marathon, 21 kilometers. For both humans and robots, it was a test of endurance, although for the robots, it was a question of battery life. But it also tested capabilities. The terrain wasn't flat. It had both uphill and downhill parts, as well as 22 left turns and 10 right turns. There were 2 categories, remote-controlled and autonomous. The winner was developed by a Chinese smartphone company, Honor. Lightning, as it's called, finished in 50 minutes and 22 seconds. It beat the human record for a half marathon by close to 7 minutes, and in fact beat the best robot time from last year by close to 2 hours. This engineer from the winning team says the company only started working on the project a year ago and modeled Lightning on elite human athletes. Now, the competition on the robot side isn't about a cash prize, but recognition. China has committed more than $20 billion to humanoid robot development, with plans for a fund worth more than $130 billion. In a system where the government is both a major investor and customer, the visibility from even a novelty race matters. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Something creepy about that. That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada is Lanceville, BC. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.